Good day, everyone. I was a little late in releasing an episode last week because, quite frankly, I was remarkably unmotivated. It's still the busy season at work, and until that returns to normal, it'll likely continue affecting me. And as understanding as everyone is to late releases, I do want to remain true to a schedule because I fear losing the gumption to keep up with the episodes. And while I'm still a very small channel, if I slow down, I'll grow even slower. It's a difficult challenge to overcome. If I do a completely different type of video like my Jujutsu Kaisen review, I get way less views than normal. But if I keep to the rewrite only, I get like 7 to 10 subs a week. It's a very challenging process to grow whilst keeping specifically to the type of content I want to make. What ifs are popular, but you can practically search for any kind of what if and find it. In my opinion, it's a very oversaturated topic. It might give me more views than normal here and there, but I also don't really want to do what ifs. When I made my Sakura what if, I was so in the dark with what was trending on YouTube that I didn't realize the what if topic was even a thing. And that transformed into a full series rewrite anyway. YouTube is way better now than it was obviously 15 years ago in suggesting the type of content I should make if I want to get bigger faster. It recommends ideas for my next video, and most of it are deep dives into manga and anime. Things like why some anime adaptations are so much better than their manga counterparts and vice versa, or pointing out historical accuracies of various shonen manga, or reviewing manga, which is what I just did last week, or the week before, sorry. But historic to my channel, anything that's not Naruto tends to do worse. People who have watched me since my very first video actively tell me that they will not watch a video if it's not Naruto related. Great. Thanks. What do I do with that? But I'll keep on trying and hopefully hit a series that acts as a springboard for other viewers to tune in. Last time the triumphant 12 were given direction at long last as half of them queue up for the Chunin exams. The main 3 depart on missions for parts unknown, and the remaining triumphant Chunin do... Yeah, I left that bit up in the air, but no one really asked about it, so I'll continue to leave that one a mystery for now. We're setting out now to see how this arc fares. I was joking with a friend earlier this week because he called this my Fullbring arc. Not in content per se, but rather in big arc to small arc to big arc. Fullbring is the smaller transitional arc between the Shinigami phase of Bleach and the Quincy phase of Bleach. But it's often thought of as the arc that spelled the doom for Bleach because popularity hit the floor while it was happening. But that's not a premonition of doom, an ill omen for my arc, but just that it won't be super long and will sandwich between 2 much larger arcs. This won't be nearly as long-winded as the timeskip arc was, and we're dealing in present time now, so it'll remain refreshing. Sasori, not the character, but a user in my Discord, uploaded a cut of my timeskip arc with all the timeskip sequences removed for a different experience. It's still a very long listen, but if you want to be in on that fun, it's pinned on my Discord. Yet another reason to join us there where the bulk of discussion happens. While we're talking of the Discord actually, for those of you who actively only chat on Discord, please just leave 1 comment on the video because that's where it counts for me. I don't want to sound unappreciative of the encounters and interactions on Discord, but all of that community used to just take place in my YouTube comment section. And if a video gets 150 comments versus a video that gets 15 comments, that can make the difference of like 10,000 views. It's one of those things that YouTube itself constantly tells me to push for. YouTube tells me to push for the stupid bell icon and comments. Comments are like number 1. It's crazy. Anyway, that's enough rambling for today. We have a lot of stuff to get through. Please enjoy the show. True to its name, the land Sasuke, Kakashi, and Might Guy dashed across was shrouded by a near-constant, incessant rain, muffling sound and masking visibility. They moved through the soaked terrain with precision, the water pooling beneath their feet as they tread lightly across muddy paths. Sasuke's Anbu mask felt heavy, not in weight, but in the gravity of its symbolism. It was stifling and weighed on him like a brand. Beneath the mask, he was both Sasuke Uchiha and someone else entirely, a shinobi trusted to complete a mission that demands more than raw power. This was not about his family or his Sharingan or his prowess in battle. It was about whether he could adapt, learn, and survive in a world where his skills are invisibility and his identity is itself a liability. Every step in this foreign land deepened the tension, as they knew every shadow could conceal a threat. Kakashi was at the head of the pack, leading them through the unknown land. Kakashi's mask blended seamlessly with his Anbu attire. He drifted above the ground like a ghost, emanating a cool confidence as he gestured silent instructions to Sasuke and Guy. Meanwhile, Might Guy, uncharacteristically quiet, followed with measured steps. Guy maintained an unwavering focus. He embodied the discipline and experience Sasuke had yet to master, and every subtle decision his two seniors made felt like a lesson he was expected to absorb. But Sasuke didn't regret the challenge. He hungered for it. But the unspoken weight of theirs, Tsunade's, and by extension, Minato's expectations pressed on Sasuke with every step. Sasuke brought up the rear, his Sharingan hidden beneath the mask, as he assumed perhaps Kakashi's was as well. He relied on Kakashi's acute senses and Guy's sharp instincts, and wondered what additional factor he brought to the group as a strength that they didn't already have. If his mission wouldn't involve combat, what could Sasuke bring as a unique advantage for the group? Was he chosen because he was seen as their equal? Or was it the promising but unproven Uchiha who still lived under his brother's potentially deceased shadow? Meanwhile, the Land of Rain felt alive, despite the downpour. Every raindrop was a whisper of danger, every shadow a potential ambush. With a single gesture from Kakashi, all three stopped at the base of a tree, huddled a foot apart from one another. "Sasuke, your gate is off," Kakashi had observed. He had been dashing nearly 40 feet in front of Sasuke, but somehow kept enough attention aside to something as small as Sasuke's steps? "Don't worry about your Sharingan until we run into someone," Kakashi instructed, pointing at Sasuke's mask's eyes. "Your Uchiha blood will boil more easily if it's always active." "I can keep it under control," Sasuke insisted. "You cannot," Kakashi immediately answered. "You can train that behavior out once we've returned home, but not while on mission." "You don't think I can—" Sasuke began before a hand rose in front of his chest. "Kakashi is the team leader," Guy whispered to him. "We both follow his orders." Checking himself and swallowing, Sasuke answered, "You're right," before extinguishing his Sharingan. "Every group needs a leader, not an ego," Kakashi warned quietly before they reassembled their formation and resumed their trek. As alive as the dangers felt, they ran for days without seeing anything. Even the wildlife was rare to see, and Sasuke wondered where everyone was, if not just holed up in a single point somewhere. Though Sasuke found initial resentment in Kakashi assuming what was best for him, he soon found different issues with his team he was temporarily a part of. Kakashi most often spoke in fragments, concise and measured. His words carried emphasis, each instruction laced with an expectation that it would be followed without question. That and his inexplicable ability to observe absolutely everything around them. It made Sasuke feel like Kakashi was a step ahead at all times. Despite his calm demeanor, Sasuke sensed an undercurrent of tension in him, like a blade honed to its limit. Simultaneously, Sasuke resented how easily Kakashi seemed to handle the mission, but also admired him for it. To Sasuke, Kakashi was a constant reminder of what a true shinobi could be: sharp, adaptable, and quietly powerful. It was a battle for Sasuke to weed out his own ego for the sake of their success. One evening, after finally finding a village and deciding to camp outside it for a night before heading in, Sasuke finally had a less stressful interaction with Kakashi. It was Sasuke's turn to take over the watch and relieve Kakashi. The rain had never once stopped falling, and it muffled any talking they could spare between one another. Kakashi did not meet his eyes at first as he began to head for his cot. "Sasuke," Kakashi muttered in barely a whisper. "You're doing well." Sasuke raised an eyebrow at Kakashi from beneath his mask, but was otherwise dismissive of the comment, since all they had done thus far was run. This mission isn't about proving who's right or wrong, and it's not about getting you a promotion. It's about saving 3 shinobi of the Leaf. What Hokage has ever thought of anything less? Kakashi asked quietly, patting Sasuke's shoulder before settling down for his turn at sleep. Sasuke needed no reply for such wisdom. He never really thought about the prospect of being Hokage himself, but maybe he should have. The last son of the Uchiha, uncorrupted and heroic? Sasuke smiled, but lost the glee just as quickly. Children were greedy and selfish because they were surrounded by people who were intent on taking care of them. As Kakashi said, this mission wasn't for them. It was for those who were stuck behind enemy lines. It wasn't enough to be powerful. Sasuke needed to learn how to wield the gifts that Kakashi had already started giving him: wisdom and restraint. The village they were meant to enter was small, tucked into a narrow clearing where the thick trees pressed close. Gray stone buildings stood haphazardly along muddy streets, their thatched roofs sagging under the weight of perpetual rainfall. A single marketplace occupied the center, buzzing with subdued activity as sparse few villagers bartered for scarce goods. Even in the rain, the place felt grim but alive. There was an air of suspicion, palpable if even hidden beneath the surface. It was an ever-present tension that seemed to infect everyone's movements. Slaves walked in linked chains as they approached a new construction project. Choji had touched on slavery existing within the Land of Rain, but Sasuke did not think he would see it so quickly. Before entering, Kakashi had crouched with Sasuke and Guy just inside the tree line. His voice was low still, barely audible over the rain. "Your mission is to stay unseen. Not even the birds or the mice can know you're here. If you're discovered, our entire operation is jeopardized. You will follow us, but from the shadows. Keep your chakra in check, use the terrain, no mistakes," Kakashi instructed to Sasuke, while Guy kept an eye out just in case. Sasuke nodded, his jaw tight. This wasn't about pride, or even skill. It was about absolute discipline. Kakashi straightened, pulled out a small scroll, and handed it to Guy. A puff of smoke, and both had transformed. Kakashi's white hair darkened to an unremarkable brown, and the lines of his face softened, transforming him into a middle-aged merchant. Guy followed suit with the scroll, his transformation jutsu turning him into a lean, wiry figure with a slight stoop and patchy stubble. "Let's go," Kakashi said, his voice now gruffer and lacking its usual casualness. As Kakashi and Guy walked into the village, Sasuke melted into the shadows of the tree line, his black Anbu cloak blending seamlessly with the gloom. He moved with painstaking care, sticking to higher ground and using natural cover of boulders and overhangs. Every step was calculated. He kept his breathing shallow and controlled, his chakra tightly wound. Even the smallest misstep, a broken twig, the scrape of a boot on wood or stone, could draw attention. Sasuke's Sharingan remained inactive, an instruction he continued to follow. Instead, he relied on his natural Uchiha senses and training. In the village, Kakashi and Guy blended in as best they could. Kakashi carried a sack of supposed trade goods over his shoulder, his posture slightly hunched as if burdened by the weight. Guy played the role of a traveling companion, his eyes darting nervously around as if unused to village life. The two headed toward the marketplace, engaging with the few merchants in low, casual tones. Kakashi asked about supplies, rice, fish, and tools, but prepared his inquiries with indirect questions about travelers or outsiders passing through. "Have things been quiet here?" "Any trouble on the roads?" he asked one shopkeeper, feigning polite curiosity. The responses were casual but revealing.
"Nothing out of the ordinary,"
one man had said, his gaze flicking nervously to the edges of the village.
"The rain keeps to themselves, just the way we like it."
From his concealed position, Sasuke watched the scene unfold. His vantage point atop a dilapidated stone wall allowed him to see both Kakashi and Guy as they moved through the village. His muscles ached from holding still for so long, but he ignored the discomfort. At one point, a stray dog padded into the alley below him, sniffing the air. Sasuke froze, his heart pounding. The animal lifted its head, its nose twitching, and began to growl softly. Sasuke's hand moved to his kunai pouch, but he stopped himself. A visible attack would obviously draw attention. Instead, he flicked a very small pebble towards the opposite end of the alley. The sound drew the dog's attention, and it trotted off distracted. In the marketplace, one of the villagers, an older woman with sharp eyes, seemed to take particular interest in Kakashi and Guy. She approached them under the guise of selling vegetables, her demeanor wary.
"You're not from around here,"
she said in a presumptive, loud voice.
"What brings you to this, our little village?"
Kakashi smiled disarmingly. "Trade," he said, holding up his sack. "Times are tough, but fish hooks and nails are always needed." The woman didn't seem convinced. Her eyes lingered on Kakashi for a moment longer before she turned and walked away. Kakashi and Guy exchanged a subtle glance, the tension razor thin even to Sasuke, who observed from afar. After gathering what little information they could, Kakashi and Guy began to leave the village. Sasuke trailed them as instructed, his movements as fluid as the rain itself. Just as they passed the outskirts, a patrol of rain ninja entered the village from the opposite direction. Sasuke's breath hitched. If the rain ninja noticed anything unusual, it could unravel everything. But Kakashi and Guy walked past them without a glance, their disguises holding under scrutiny. Sasuke remained perfectly still, stuck between the patrol and Kakashi and Guy. Though he had kept to the edges of the village, it still required a split second of being in the open before he could vanish through the wall's other side.
"They went that way,"
the same annoying woman from before shouted to the approaching ninja.
"I swear I seen him."
As the rain ninja surrounded and probed the woman, Sasuke found his only opening to slip out without notice. Only then did he follow Kakashi and Guy back into the forest. Once they were clear of the village, Kakashi turned to Sasuke. "You weren't seen," he said simply, his tone neutral as his disguise dissolved away. Guy grinned, clapping Sasuke lightly on the shoulder. "You handled the dog well. Quick thinking." Sasuke nodded, swallowing. He knew better than to let the moment inflate his ego. The mission was far from over. This was only the beginning, and none of this was even about him. She was trying to send the rain ninja back in this direction, Sasuke warned, tipping off Kakashi and Guy to the last blurb of information he gleaned before leaving. "Then we'd better get a move on." Kakashi nodded, gesturing for them to follow. Guy, who was usually loud and exuberant, was subdued but no less resolute. His presence was a bulwark, a constant reminder that strength wasn't just physical, but mental. Sasuke noticed how Guy's focus never wavered, how he stood as an immovable pillar in this foreign, hostile land. Guy didn't give Sasuke the same quiet guidance as Kakashi. Instead, his lessons came through action. When the group encountered a tense moment, a group of rain ninja passing too close, a dangerous gap to be crossed, Guy handled it with confidence, as if daring Sasuke to rise to the occasion. Yet, Guy's occasional glance at Sasuke held something deeper. Trust. "You'll get there," his gaze seemed to say. "You're capable of this." Since their encounter at the village, the forest seemed to automatically populate with rain ninja, forcing their quiet travel to be far more tighter than before. At one point, the group barely avoided a patrol of rain ninja. Sasuke froze as they passed, holding his breath, his heart pounding in his chest. Kakashi's subtle hand signal, a sharp tilt of his fingers, guided them into the shadow of a nearby derelict building where they crouched in wait. The rain dripped down their masks, but no one dared move. Moments like these certainly felt like a test to Sasuke's patience and self-control, honing his skills in a way battle never could. The Land of Rain was a world apart, its urban sprawl a chaotic convergence of decay and necessity. Rusted metal catwalks crisscrossed between leaning buildings, their jagged edges flaking into the ever-present downpour. Water sluiced through narrow alleyways, pooling in potholes and washing over debris. The rain never ceased. It was a constant drumming against rooftops, a curtain that distorted sound and obscured vision. The trio moved carefully, their presence a subtle disturbance in the rhythm of the city. This was no village. The stakes were higher in this newfound land. The city was just as dreary as the tiny village they had previously visited, but at least its streets were populated by the ebb and flow of its residents, most of whom seemed to operate in silence, their expression guarded, their movements purposeful. Every glance from a passerby felt heavy with suspicion, and for all his talent, Sasuke still felt like an outsider beside Guy and Kakashi. He moved with equal precision, mimicking the fluidity of his teammates, but he knew his experiences paled in comparison. Kakashi and Guy communicated effortlessly, with gestures and faint movements that spoke of years of friendship and working together. Sasuke watched and learned, internalizing their synergy while struggling to find his place within it. Despite this, he knew they were testing him, not just his skills, but his character. Kakashi left a great many small decisions to Sasuke, letting him determine their next move within a limited framework. Guy let him take the lead with smaller tasks, observing without judgment. Sasuke's successes and failures were not met with criticism, but with silence, forcing him to reflect on his own performance. As they moved between the monotonous crowds of the Grey City, Sasuke began to understand the unspoken lesson. It's not about individual brilliance. It's about knowing when to lead, when to follow, and when to simply endure. Kakashi continued to lead the group, his demeanor casual but his eyes sharp. He nodded in passing to the occasional vendor or worker, playing the part of a traveler with just enough purpose to avoid scrutiny. Guy lagged slightly behind, carrying an improvised pack and muttering to himself like a distracted tradesman. Their strategy here was different. In the village, they had relied on direct interactions, subtle as they were. Here, the density of the population allowed them to blend into the background, observing and listening. Kakashi tilted his head slightly, catching snippets of conversation as they passed by groups of workers unloading crates. Meanwhile, Guy lingered near a food stall, his eyes scanning the crowd while he pretended to haggle over dried fish. Their disguises were ordinary enough to avoid attention, but their every moment was calculated. Sasuke's task was the same as before. He was the unseen watcher, blending into the labyrinthine environment. Moving across rooftops and catwalks, he kept to the higher levels of the city where the rain was heaviest and the shadows deepest. Every step was a test of balance and patience as he avoided puddles that could splash or rusted grates that might groan under his weight. From above, Sasuke observed the ebb and flow of the city's residents. His Sharingan, boy did he ever want to use it, remained asleep, but his sharp eyes caught the details others might miss anyway. A man hurrying into a building, clutching a bag tightly. A group of workers pausing their tasks to exchange furtive glances. A trail of muddy footprints leading from a side street to an unmarked warehouse. Sasuke focused on these subtle patterns, piecing together perhaps an unspoken story of the city. He saw Kakashi and Guy below, their movements almost imperceptibly guiding the flow of attention away from him. The constant rain acted as both ally and adversary. It masked small sounds, allowing the trio to move with relative silence, but it also amplified anything out of the ordinary. When a metal ladder creaked under Sasuke's weight, he froze. The sound was faint, lost in the cacophony of water, but it had been enough to make a nearby bird take flight. Sasuke held his breath as a pair of rain ninja passed below him. Their uniforms were dark and their faces obscured by hoods, but their movements were precise and deliberate. They spoke in low tones, their conversation almost lost to the rain. "Another patrol near the perimeter. They're getting close," one said urgently. Let them. If they overstep, it's their problem. I'm not taking the heat for that. Another answered with frustration. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. The words were too vague, but the tension in their voices was unmistakable. As night fell, the trio regrouped into one of many abandoned structures on the outskirts of the primary urban area. The structure was barely standing, its walls cracked and its roof sagging under the weight of water. Kakashi and Guy had gathered little in the way of hard information, but their observations had been valuable. The Rain Ninja are active, Kakashi said, his voice low. They're not patrolling aimlessly. They're guarding something. Guy nodded, his expression unusually serious. The workers in the marketplace were nervous. They didn't say anything, but their body language was clear. Something's got them on edge. Sasuke leaned against the nearest wall, his arms crossed. There's an abandoned warehouse 2 streets from here. A group of men went in earlier. They were carrying supplies, food, water, maybe even medical equipment. Kakashi raised an eyebrow and Sasuke knew what he was going to ask. Did they notice you? No. Sasuke shook his head. They were too focused on what they were doing. Kakashi nodded thankfully. That's our next step then. We'll approach just before dawn. Despite the tension, there was an unspoken trust between them. Kakashi and Guy, seasoned veterans, knew how to work seamlessly together. Sasuke, though younger and less experienced, was proving his worth with every step. He wasn't just following orders at this point, he was thinking, adapting, and contributing. Kakashi glanced at Sasuke as they prepared their next move. You're doing well, he said simply. Just remember, our success depends on your ability to remain unseen. The moment you're discovered, it's over. Sasuke nodded, his expression calm but determined. This wasn't just some test, it was a mission. One they needed to complete for the sakes of Genma, Iwashi, and Raido. Guy's keeping a watch this time, Sasuke. Kakashi instructed as they lay flat on the rooftop opposite the warehouse Sasuke had previously pointed out. None of the rumors they were hearing were explicitly the information they sought. However, to this point, it most accurately matched what they did seek. Something was happening inside that building, and Sasuke was finally getting a front row seat as to what that was. We cannot be seen, no matter what. Kakashi reinforced, though Sasuke was well aware of that little caveat. He did not spare a single word to Guy before signaling for he and Sasuke to move out. Sasuke followed Kakashi and copied his every action such that their feet landed in the exact same points, only a half second apart from one another. Sasuke made himself into a shadow of Kakashi's shadow as they sprinted to the rooftop of the great warehouse Sasuke had previously seen. There was a single pyramid skylight in the middle of the flat roof that made it easy for them to peer into the building. With a quick jutsu execution, Kakashi set a genjutsu to mask the lower view of the window, such that if anyone looked up, they would be unable to see Kakashi and Sasuke looking down at them. Ninja art! Clear mirror! Kakashi muttered, and as he completed the jutsu, thunder rumbled overhead, drawing Sasuke's attention for a moment. They had been searching the Land of Rain for nearly 2 weeks, and there hadn't been a single call of thunder yet. Kakashi seemed unperturbed as he started on lifting one of the windows out of its frame, raising a tarp over it to prevent rain from falling in. While Sasuke laid low and kept a lookout, he noticed too that the rain was finally beginning to thin. As he looked up at the sky, Kakashi muttered, "Got it!" as the seal of the window finally popped open. The rain was gone, and the clouds overhead began to part. The dramatic shift in the weather sent an eerie shiver through the air. The rain, relentless and unyielding for days, stopped abruptly as though the clouds themselves had been silenced. The sound of water cascading from rooftops diminished into a faint trickle, leaving an uncanny quiet in its wake. Sasuke crouched low to the roof, his sharp eyes locked on Kakashi, who had paused mid-movement at the window. Kakashi turned his head slightly, his gaze meeting Sasuke's. The sudden stop of the rain was unnatural, an omen neither had the context to interpret. Below them, the bustling streets of the Rain Village had fallen into an eerie stillness. Doors slammed shut, windows were hastily boarded, and even the shadows seemed to retreat into themselves. Yet the trio, outsiders to this land and its unspoken rules, pressed forward. Kakashi slipped through the now open window with practiced grace, gesturing for Sasuke to follow. The air inside was damp and heavy, smelling of rust and mildew. Stacks of crates lined the walls, their markings obscured by grime, while the faint sound of voices echoed from deeper within. Sasuke landed silently behind Kakashi, his senses heightened. Every step they took was measured, their movements perfectly synchronized. Through the dim lighting, they advanced towards a raised platform at the center of the warehouse, where 4 bald men in black cloaks stood in a semicircle around a lone Rain Ninja. The Rain Ninja, dressed in standard-issue gear, looked visibly uncomfortable as he gestured towards the 3 figures bound and slumped against the wall. Even from this distance, Sasuke recognized them: Genma, Iwashi, and Raido. All together. They were alive but battered. Whether they had the strength to get out of there, Sasuke wasn't sure. The Rain Ninja's voice was hushed but urgent as he spoke to the cloaked men. "The package is intact. You'll find they're durable, but the price..." One of the cloaked figures raised a hand, silencing him. The man's face remained obscured by the shadows of his hood, but his presence was suffocating. "You don't dictate terms. We'll take them. Payment is non-negotiable." Sasuke's fists clenched. He couldn't discern the cloaked man's intentions, but the word package made his blood boil. Whatever they planned for the captured shinobi was vile, of that he was certain. Kakashi, however, remained calm, observing every detail with calculated precision. His hand hovered near his pouch, ready to signal Guy or initiate an escape. Before they could act, a low rumble reverberated through the warehouse. Dust fell from the rafters as the massive double doors at the front of the building groaned under unseen pressure. Then, with a deafening explosion, the 30-foot doors were blasted inward, disintegrating into splinters and twisted metal. The sheer force knocked over crates and sent shockwaves through the room. Sasuke and Kakashi both instinctively leaped to the beams above, narrowly avoiding detection. In the gaping void where the doors had stood, a man in a flowing white cloak entered, with the fiery red hair of an Uzumaki. He walked with an unnatural calm, his Rinnegan glowing faintly in the dim warehouse light. His cloaked figure exuded an aura of absolute authority. The 4 cloaked men turned sharply, their composure faltering. Even the Rain Ninja backed away, sweat beading on his brow. Pain's gaze swept the room, his expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was both quiet and thunderous, reverberating through the warehouse like the finality of a tolling bell. "I knew I detected foreign chakra," he observed, looking at the bald men. "But maybe not so foreign." The cloaked men exchanged glances, their confidence clearly shaken. One of them stepped forward, attempting to maintain some semblance of control. "We have no quarrel with you. This is a private transaction." Pain raised a hand, and the man was silenced mid-sentence. Without warning, his body crumpled to the ground, lifeless. The remaining 3 cloaked men stepped back, panic overtaking them. From their perch above, Kakashi's mind raced. The only known man in the bingo book to have a Rinnegan was the sage Pain from the Land of Rain. Word of his abilities were legendary, though the specifics were shrouded in mystery. He had no intention of engaging with such a foe, not with Sasuke and their mission on the line. Kakashi whispered, barely audible, "We need to get the prisoners and leave. Guy, if you're listening, get ready." Sasuke, however, couldn't take his eyes off Pain. This was no ordinary enemy. The raw power radiating from him was unlike anything he had ever encountered before. Could it have rivaled the Sannin? The Hokage? Still, he tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword, ready to strike if it came to it. His Sharingan activated reflexively, the Tomo spinning as he analyzed every movement below. Kakashi's grip attacked Sasuke's arm, and he shook his head quietly before the Sharingan again diminished. Pain moved towards the platform, the tension in the room escalating with every step. The cloaked men were frozen in fear, unable to flee or fight. The Rain Ninja stammered, falling to his knees in a desperate plea for mercy. "Please, Lord Pain, I didn't know..." But Pain silenced him with a mere glance, his eyes locking onto the captured shinobi. He extended his hand and the chains binding Genma, Iwashi, and Raido shattered with a flicker of chakra. The situation had spiraled well beyond their control. Kakashi signaled to Sasuke 2 short taps on his arm. The message was clear: prepare to extract the prisoners. As Pain turned his back to address the remaining cloaked men, the opportunity presented itself, but the air was charged with danger. Any wrong move could mean death. The remaining bald men seemed to suddenly move in complete synchronization, discarding their robes and displaying intricate seals running around their shoulders, along their arms, and swirling around the centerpiece at their hearts. In a quick releasing hand gesture from the men, the marks began to glow, and without hesitation they threw themselves at Sage Pain. Instantly, the room filled with black smoke and a spark of flames as the men seemingly sacrificed themselves against Pain's daunting presence. The warehouse trembled as smoke and debris erupted from the desperate explosion. Sasuke shielded his face from the shockwave, his shouting gun spinning unwittingly to track the chaos unfolding. Kakashi's voice was sharp and low. "Shouting gun off! Move now!" Sasuke nodded, landing beside Genma and helping hoist his barely conscious body over his shoulder. Kakashi took both Iwashi and Raido, who were heavier and less responsive, while Guy met them just outside the warehouse to take Iwashi. The 3 Leaf Shinobi were battered but alive, though far too weak to escape under their own power. The team took off without hesitation, their movements as fluid as the rain that had only moments before drenched the city. Every footfall was calculated, every breath suppressed to near silence. Their retreat was well rehearsed, the result of countless missions requiring absolute precision. Behind them, the faint sound of groaning metal grew louder. Not 30 seconds after their exit, the warehouse erupted in a blinding flash of fire and force. The ground quaked beneath their feet as the flames shot into the sky, momentarily lighting up the entire city in hues of orange and red. The roar of the explosion drowned out even the wind, leaving behind a gaping scar in the earth where the structure had stood. Sasuke didn't need to look back to see that Pain was furious. He could feel it, a suffocating malice emanating from the epicenter of the destruction. It was as though the world itself held its breath, waiting for the wrath of a god to descend. Kakashi muttered under his breath just loud enough for Guy to hear. "We're not out of this yet. Keep your chakra hidden. Move." They darted through the city streets, retracing their entry path with a precision born of preparation. The sudden silence of the city worked both for and against them. There were no civilians to obscure their movements, but the stillness amplified every creak of their gear, every faint footstep on wet stone. Sasuke's mind raced. The explosion was loud enough to alert the entire city, but no one was coming to investigate. The streets remained eerily empty, the locals too terrified to leave their homes. The weight of Pain's reputation hung over the land of rain like a storm cloud. The team reached the outskirts of the city, nearing the gates that would lead them into the dense terrain beyond. Just as they prepared to pass through, Kakashi froze. Ahead, 2 lone rain ninja blocked their path, both young and visibly nervous. One of them raised a hand, his voice shaking but resolute. "Halt! You're not going anywhere!" Kakashi took a slow, deliberate step forward, his voice calm but heavy with authority. "You don't want this fight." The 2 ninja exchanged uneasy glances. They weren't fools. They too felt the sheer power emanating from the warehouse moments ago. And now, here stood 3 seasoned and determined Leaf Shinobi, carrying wounded comrades. The Rain Ninjas stepped aside, their decision made. "We're not stopping you." The second ninja's voice was almost quieter. "But we'll make sure Lord Pain will." Kakashi didn't respond. He gestured for the team to move, and they slipped past the gate without another word. If they leave 2 bodies behind, they're leaving a mark on the trail to track them. If they take the time to hide the bodies, they're caught before they can even make a trail. The group moved into the wilderness, hearts pounding in sync with their rapid pace. The dense terrain provided some cover, but they all knew it was far from enough. Pain's abilities were otherworldly. His speed and sensory reach could outmatch their best efforts. Still, They pressed on. Kakashi led the way, his mind working furiously to devise a plan. Guy stayed at the rear, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. Sasuke in the center carried Genma while fighting to keep his Sharingan inactive, searching for the faintest disturbance in their surroundings. The oppressive silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the labored breathing of their rescued comrades. Each step felt like a gamble, each second borrowed against a debt they couldn't repay. In the distance, faint tremors rippled through the ground. Sasuke glanced back instinctively, his Sharingan finally overwhelming his will and firing to life, catching the faintest hint of movement on the horizon. Something was coming. Fast. Kakashi noticed it too, his voice sharp but steady. "Don't stop. Don't look back." The team pushed onward, the tension mounting with every stride. The land stretched endlessly before them, yet the looming shadow of pain felt closer with each passing second. Logic dictated that escape was impossible, yet they clung to the hope that the chaos at the warehouse had bought them enough time. As they disappeared into the misty expanse, the faint sound of rain began to die all around them, as if the storm died with their flight, or Pain's presence. And behind them, somewhere in the vast wilds, Pain moved. And that's the end of today's episode. It was really refreshing to do some world building as well as a nearly combat-free mission. Our three main characters on the chapter technically didn't engage with anyone, but Pain certainly engaged in something. It's been a while, but we've encountered the bald men again. I hope that's a fun little discovery for those of you who loved Theorycraft. What are those men up to? Who do they work for? I honestly didn't know which episode I was going to do first. I'm truly excited for all the storylines to unravel. And while I'll have more firm conclusions for some of them, get prepared to have some unanswered questions. I feel like I closed out the timeskip arc by answering a lot of age-old questions. Well, it's time to start layering on mysteries anew. I mean, in saying that, there are still a number of mysteries that you all have had the tools to solve for at least 20 episodes, but those mysteries remain unsolved. I hope when the series is finished and some of you go back for a second or third listen, you really start to pick up on those extremely early hints that I've been developing through the whole rewrite. Because at the end of the day, if no one picks up on those hints and I just have to come right out and make the connection for everyone, that just won't feel good for me at all. Something like that would pretty clearly spell out that I'm awful at making mysteries. Which would be a shame because I really like mysteries, especially when they're done well. Someone in my Discord recommended the audio drama Borrasca like a month ago, and that's a mystery that I also really like. But it's the kind of mystery that, once you hear the solution, all the previous story points start to make more sense. But it's not the kind of mystery that you can necessarily solve yourself. In that case, you rely on the story revealing the mystery to you. Also, just because it's crazy, if you're intending on listening to Borrasca, please take a moment before doing so. It's extremely dark and not for the faint of heart. I mean that seriously. It's actually for mature audiences only. Thank you everyone for watching, and I wonder where I go next. The sky's the limit.